Look at blood sugar regulation, it's involved in every disease, right? It advances many diseases. It causes hormonal issues. It can increase autoimmune diseases, cardiovascular problems, strokes, dementia, Alzheimer's, which is called type 3 diabetes. I mean, it's at the realm of everything. And if you don't have good normal blood sugar regulation, your body is it's regressing and getting worse.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who is out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. My name is Bob Nickman. My guest today is Dr. Jason Shumard. We're going to be talking about reversing type 2 diabetes. Jason is a functional medicine practitioner with more than 20 years helping people with type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance find true answers, especially those who feel confused by conventional approaches. Rather than seeing diabetes as just about numbers, he focuses on lab-based root cause investigation into why blood sugar rises and disease progresses, going for something much deeper than eat less sugar and take more meds. Jason's passion is deeply personal, stemming from losing his mother to diabetes complications. So let's jump in. This is Dr. Jason Shumard. Good morning, Jason. We finally made it on here after my mistake, ladies and gentlemen. I did not send him the link, but luckily he was, I sent it at the last minute, and here he is. Hi.
Hey, I'm ready for this. I'm ready.
I'm ready too. You're in San Diego. I'm in Los Angeles. This is a California day of podcasting.
Another terrible day in California, blue skies and, probably 78 degrees.
I'm bored with the sun.
Everyone else in the country's like, screw you guys.
Yeah, well, it's, we pay a price in other ways for
sure.
living here. So it's a great place. And, we're going to talk about a lot of different things in the health field. Jason is a chiropractor by trade, I guess. What do we call it? Trade, I guess.
Yeah.
Profession. We'll use the word profession.
There you go.
And so and I was telling Jason before we started that when I started to get more into my own health, that was the way in. I didn't know that was what was going to happen, but I went to a chiropractor / nutritionist who had learned a lot of different things. And I actually had two of them that I was sort of using at the time many years ago. And that's where I learned that a lot of things, I mean, particularly what we want to talk about today is there's chronic disease that is not so easily handled by conventional primary care MD physicians, not because they're not great, just because they haven't learned certain things that you do learn in other types of places. So let's talk about how you got into that, and then I want to get into some of the chronic diseases that can be mitigated.
Yeah, so I think as a kid, I was very athletic in a lot of sports. Of course, accompanying those came injuries, and a lot of rehabilitation, physical therapy, broken bones, etc. But I had a lot of health issues. I grew up in a community where there was a lot of farming involved, and I had a lot of asthma, allergies, these sort of things. And I just remember constantly using inhalers and taking medications, and that's the belief at the time when my parents were growing up that was the way to do things. And I just never felt like that was the right approach. So when I moved on out of high school, I went to San Diego State, so I went to college. And I started getting, understanding more about, different careers and everything. And one of the courses that I took, they had different speakers come in from different professions. So we had a medical doctor come in, a physical therapist, we had nurses, and then one of them was a doctor of chiropractic. And when he was speaking about the profession, it just really resonated with me about the philosophy. The body has the ability to heal itself. And if it's in the right place, if everything's working optimally, it can heal and function and live a very long time. And I always kind of believed that. I just didn't know the mechanics of it. And when I saw that, I heard that, I immediately transitioned into saying I'm going to become a chiropractor. I'd never been to a chiropractor in my life. I'd never seen one. I never had an adjustment even when I started school. My first experience of chiropractic was at the student center there. An intern was going through their clinicals, and he was the first person that ever gave me an adjustment. It was pretty wild. And so, but my first quarter at the school, I just realized this is the best place for me to be. Like the people I was around, the philosophy, what I was learning was exactly what I wanted. And as this process continued to evolve, my mom was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes around that same time. And as most people, at least I thought at the time, and maybe many of you listening to this today, is that it's a manageable disease, right? You can just, eat a certain way, exercise, you can keep your weight down, take medications, it's manageable. Well, what I learned was that is actually not the truth at all. That no matter what she did, she continued to get worse. She was taking more medication, increasing medications, and eventually she was put on insulin. And so I just knew I was like, I looked at this and said, this is wild. This is insane. Why is she continually getting worse if she's following the recommendations and doing what her doctors are telling her to do? Well, around the same time, because my school was very open to things, I learned about functional medicine, heard about functional medicine. So I started taking some courses while I was a student, learning more about functional medicine, how it works. And interestingly enough, it worked really well with the philosophy of a chiropractor. This is why there's so many chiropractors that do functional medicine, because it resonates so well with what we do and what we believe about the human body. Well, as I got out of school, continued my education, I eventually got to a place where I was really, really comfortable and felt I could start helping individuals. And I primarily got in this to help my mom. But when I came to her and my dad with all this information and started telling them, here's what we can do. I believe we can you can get you off your medications. You can become non-diabetic, etc. She didn't want it. She wasn't interested. She was not interested in making the changes. She was not interested in doing what was necessary. And just, it was very mind-boggling to me because her doctors were telling her that she was fine, that everything was good, that she'd keep on that same course. You're doing fine. You're managing, even though she was taking more medications and was increasing medications over the time. But she believed her doctors. Well, fast forward few 5, 10 years later down the road, I get a phone call. Interestingly enough, the phone call that I received was on my way to do a presentation on type 2 diabetes at a local event that I was doing. And so I got a phone call from my dad saying, your mom has some testing we need you to look at. So when I got home and eventually looked at the testing, I knew she was moving into dialysis. Her kidneys had failed. She was in full blown, I think her GFR was like a 12 or something. So she was moving into dialysis. And the most interesting thing about this, and which probably going to blow some minds here, is that when she had full blown kidney failure, her A1C, which is her average blood sugar, was at a 6.1, which is essentially pre-diabetes numbers. I mean, she was taking medications, but her A1C was at a 6.1. So why was her kidneys failing if blood sugar was truly the issue? And this is what I've been teaching for nearly 20 years now, that if we continue to focus on trying to lower sugars only, that your diabetes is going to progress, because that's just a symptom of your disease. It's not the cause. That diabetes is a cell disease. That's why they call it insulin resistance, because it's the cells that are damaged. And unless you identify what's causing those cells to be damaged and actually fix the cells, it doesn't matter what you do, your disease will progress. And that's what happened to her. And unfortunately, 8 months later, after she started dialysis, she had a stroke and she passed. Like, this is how fast the diabetes progressed over time. This is what we normally see with most diabetics, which is so scary, not only for diabetes, but when you look at blood sugar regulation, it's involved in every disease, right? It advances many diseases. It causes hormonal issues. It can increase autoimmune diseases, cardiovascular problems, strokes, dementia, Alzheimer's, which is called type 3 diabetes. I mean, it's at the realm of everything. And if you don't have good normal blood sugar regulation, your body is regressing and getting worse.
A lot of stuff in there that you just said. The first thing that sort of struck me was the trust of the real doctors,
Yes, sir.
And the not questioning that supposed authority. Now, those guys know a lot, and women, of course, but they know a lot, but they don't know everything. And there is a missing piece in medical schools, I think probably still to this day, that sort of functional medicine idea of the whole body and how it works in conjunction with each other. It seems to me like a lot of what they do there is sort of like, I liken it to auto repair. The carburetor's not working, we fix the carburetor. Well, it's not working because there's something wrong in the gas tank, and the gas has got contaminants in it, and it's screwing up the carburetor. I'm not a mechanic, but I'm just sort of this idea that to not look at the whole picture, and that these things, in particular diabetes, because you can probably tell me more about what the percentage of the population is pre-diabetic or actually diabetic. It's high. I think it's over 50% or something like that. It's really high. That it's primarily a lifestyle disease, that people live themselves into it by either doing something or not doing something. And that it can be, I'm assuming in most cases, reversed. That's pretty much what you're saying. Does that sound right?
You're partially right.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at diabetes, and by the way, you're right, 50% of the population is stated right now to be pre-diabetic, and about 15% or so is considered type 2 diabetic, which is climbing. It's increasing on a yearly basis now. But when we look at diabetes, lifestyle definitely plays a role, but the lifestyle in most cases is not the cause. And this was actually identified in a 2019 study in the Journal of Nutrition by Kaiser Permanente. And they went back and evaluated individuals that follow what they considered a standard of care. And what they define standard of care is they changed the way they eat. They didn't identify what that was, by the way. Just they were eating better, essentially. They were being active. They were, doing some sort of activity like exercising, and they were keeping their weight down and taking medication. And what they found, and it was roughly between about 300 to 500,000 people, if I remember correctly. I haven't read the study in a while, but it was a good large group of people that they followed. And so what they found was those who actually put their diabetes in remission, they called it remission, which meant no medications, normal A1C, and they were essentially non-diabetic at this time. And by following those regulations, right, the taking medication, eating better, exercising, losing weight, the typical people think that you do with diabetes, they actually found, statistically speaking, 0.23% were able to put their diabetes in remission by following that recommendation. So it's 0.25%. Mm-hmm. So this is why, because lifestyle does play a role. And here's how it does play a role, because when we consume food, that food gets assimilated in our gastrointestinal system and then gets released into our bloodstream as glucose or sugar, because that's our fuel source. You mentioned the car. I give that analogy all the time. And so once that gets released into your bloodstream, your pancreas releases insulin to counteract that. Now, the way that it counteracts it is it attaches itself to the glucose, and then it drags itself over to a cell. And at the edge of the cell, we have what's called an insulin receptor. So think about it like a ball and a glove, right? They attach to each other. Once the insulin attaches to the receptor, it opens a door into the cells to allow the sugar to enter the cells to get into our mitochondria, which is our engines of our body. And that's how our body produces energy. This is basic fundamental functions of the human being. Consume food, use that fuel source and to produce energy. And that's how our brain functions, our heart, lungs, how we work every single day. Now, if you have an individual who has a poor lifestyle, they're consuming poor quality food, it's releasing large amounts of sugar very rapidly, which then releases large amounts of insulin. And when you start to have large amounts of insulin inside your body, it starts to encompass the cells and damage them, just like throwing too much water on a plant. It damages the plant. Well, this damages those receptors. So now the insulin receptor cannot accept insulin. That's where the term comes from, insulin resistance. So then if the insulin can attach, the door never opens, the sugar never enters the cell, and where does the sugar go? Back into the bloodstream. Now, after years and decades of this happening, eventually the levels of sugar increases in your bloodstream that you now go get a blood test done and you see elevated sugar. And now the thought is, I got to do everything to get my sugars down. When in reality, it's been multiple years and decades of cellular damage that has created this problem. So now if we change the way we eat, we do a 180. We're eating really well now. Yes, Now that's going to release lower amounts of sugars from your gut, which is going to, and you have to have net less insulin now, and it'll access any cells that are available, and it'll lower the sugars in your bloodstream. But the reality is the damaged cells that were there are still damaged, and they're replicating damaged. This is what happens when you have damaged cells. They replicate themselves to be damaged. They don't replicate new cells, they replicate damaged cells. And they continue doing this, which is why the person gets worse with time. So now you've got an individual who is eating better, they've lowered their sugars, and now let's say they've gone from a full-blown diabetes patient to pre-diabetic, which is fantastic. We want lower sugars, but the reality is we still have damaged cells. And we still haven't talked about the other damage that's occurred from that poor lifestyle for multiple decades, impacting different organs like your liver, your kidney, your intestinal tract, causing things like leaky gut, adrenal issues, thyroid problems. We can have inflammation systemically throughout the body. There could be underlying toxicity burdens because of the damage of your inability to get rid of these toxins from your body from poor detoxification skills from this lifestyle that has created this multiple damage. So if we only work on lowering the sugars from a nutrition component and we don't address all these other problems, more cells become damaged over time. The person progresses and they're thinking, what am I doing wrong?
So there's two things here then. There's the creation of the diabetic state, which, how do we live to prevent that from happening? And then there's what are the protocols to reverse the cell damage and get back to optimal health?
That's right. That's right. And so this is the missing link, which is happening in the medical model, because their entire focus is to lower the sugars, which is good because it reduces the risk of immediate complications, but it doesn't reduce the risk of future complications. The CDC even states if you have an A1C below a 7, which is the typical standard right now, if your A1C is below a 7, your doctor's telling you you're doing fine. But the CDC states that if your A1C is below a 7, you're still at risk of complications. Well, this is not being told in the medical model. Why? We still have elevated sugars, right? And so that's what's happening but the problem is most medications, the best they can do is keep it in the like the 6s somewhere. And there's nothing more they can do beyond that. So the damage is still occurring, the problem's still happening. So yes, we need to fix the nutrition, because I think that's a big, huge component. It's a big chunk there. But there's also, you have to identify what other problems. Because remember, the liver, the kidney, the intestinal tract, the thyroid, the adrenal glands, your brain, these are all involved in blood sugar regulation. So if you have a poor functioning liver, let's say you have a fatty liver, then you can't have healthy cells. And if you can't have healthy cells, you're never going to reverse your diabetes. And it's the same for any other condition. You have all those other organs that are involved in blood sugar regulation as well.
So what kind of things do you look for probably in lab tests also, and then how do you get people to, what is it that you ask people to look at to change? Is there supplementation? Is there lifestyle change? What are the things that you do with people?
Yeah, it's a combination, right? So you're right. You hit the nail on the head. The first thing we have to do is we have to identify. And unfortunately, the common tests that are being ran in the medical model are just very nominal, right? They're not really running extensive analysis to identify cause. What they're looking for is the current treatment working? Do you need additional treatment, meaning additional medications? Or is there a new problem that's going on that needs to be addressed as well? And that's essentially managed care. That's what's considered managed care. So oftentimes patients come to me saying, no, my doctor's running an extensive test. And I look at it, I'm like, this is not extensive. This is just telling us what medication you need. That's all it's telling us. Yeah. So we need extensive analysis. And one of them, we call it our root cause analysis, right? So one component of that is our blood test, and we look at multiple different levels. So for example, I talked about the liver a second ago. Many people don't know that there are 3 actually direct liver markers and 2 indirect liver markers that need to be evaluated that are rarely ever evaluated. Typically, there's only 1 or 2 that are evaluated. And again, if you have 2 that are in line, but the third one's not, if you don't look at that, how are you going to know it's a problem going on? And so that's an example of looking at a full comprehensive test. And when you compare a normal test from the medical practitioner to what we run, it's night and day. There's just totally different mechanisms. So what we're looking for is not a disease process. That's what your doctors are looking for. Your medical practitioners are looking for diseases. What we're looking for are what areas are not functioning optimally any longer. So the analogy I give is we're identifying the check engine lights before the car breaks down. And so if we can identify problems that are developing, not fully in a disease process, we can bring it back. And this is the exact reason why I run tests on myself every 6 months, not because I have a disease, because I'm identifying is there something going on, there's something breaking down in my body, and I need to do some things to bring it back. So that's one test that we'll run, and we can do it through LabCorp or Quest. They're accessible through all cities throughout the country, which makes it super simple to run these blood tests. The second test we do is a toxin burden test. So a toxicity test evaluating for things like heavy metals, molds, and environmental toxins. Because these types of toxins, of course, are being exposed to them, but these toxins have been shown to directly impact your cells. They've been known to damage your cells directly, contributing to diseases like type 2 diabetes and other ones as well, cancers, autoimmunes, etc. But not only that, they will also damage organs and other tissues that are involved in blood sugar regulation. Many times the diabetics that we evaluate, they have a huge amount of burden of these toxins, not because they've just been exposed to them. It's because of their body's inability to get rid of them. Because usually they're going to have some liver issues, kidney problems, and GI issues where they can't eliminate them. They can still have a bowel movement, they can still have urination, but they can't get the toxins out. So they just keep recycling back into their tissues, causing more and more damage and perpetuating the disease process. So once we understand what these two problems are showing up as, now we can have a blueprint of what's going on and what needs to be done. Of course, we're going to be addressing the nutrition because that's our foundation. It's a way that we can create an environment that is conducive to healing, right? If you have poor food coming in, I don't care what you're doing, you're not going to get better, right? If you have good quality food coming in, you're giving your body the fuel that it needs, it's easier for it to heal. Then we can start using specific supplements or nutraceuticals, which are essentially blends that will address the specific problems. If it's the liver, the adrenal glands, if it's toxins, if it's inflammation, if it's an infection pattern, whatever it might be, to start moving and chipping away at these problems so the body now has the ability to start healing again. Once we get the body in a stabilized place, now we can start focusing on healing those cells, right? And when those cells start healing, now they start replicating as a healthy cell, and we start replicating more and more of these healthy cells. What happens to the sugars? They go down naturally. We don't give anybody anything to lower their sugars. We help the body heal, and then the body has the ability to start doing it on its own because that's just normal function. It's like saying, hey, I'm going to put gas into my car and it never reaches the engine. Well, your car's not going anywhere if that's the case.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is exactly what's happening in the body. If we can free up that gas, get into your engine, now your car can do its job, and so can your body.
In terms of the toxicity, I think from what I can tell, there's some people have a genetic predisposition to not be able to eliminate toxins as well as other people. So, there's some of that actually goes on with certain people. It's just the way they're structured genetically. So, do you do any DNA testing, or is that a separate?
We used to do that a lot, but we found what you're saying is so true, Bob. So many people have had this problem that we just assume they have it these days. Just like MTHFR, right? The methylation genetic and MTRR, which is the B12 deficiency situation. We just assume people have these things.
Oh, okay.
And so the protocols that we do is going to encompass everything. The individual who has a genetic component and the individuals who don't. And even if they don't have it, it's not going to impact them negatively if we give them these other protocols. It's still going to help their body get these toxins out. So it's a guiding process, right? So we want to help them improve the functionality of the organ itself to do its job because it's deficient, right? It's essentially, I talk about like clogging the toilets. They're clogged up toilets, if you will, in those areas. And if we can start freeing those open and we can start helping the body pull these toxins, then we can remove them. And it's not a perfect system. As we're removing them, some of them are going out, some of them are going back in. But as you continually do this over and over, you see a decrease of going out or going back in and more going out. And now the body can start to heal. And we see a lot of impacts, better brain function, better sleep, easier for the person to lose their weight because their hormones are becoming more balanced, blood sugar reducing, like all these things start to happen. And we're not like having them do extensive exercises and stuff. We're just helping their body get more stable.
Do you also recommend other things like a liver flush or intermittent fasting, semi long-term fasting, those kinds of things?
I think the intermittent fasting, what we typically do is we do no longer than 12 to 14 hours for most of our patients.
Hmm.
And mostly because it's interesting, as a type 2 diabetic, many of them are not eating enough food. Like they're eating like one time a day or maybe
Oh,
twice a day,
okay.
and they just don't eat enough food because they believe that if they eat less food, it's going to help their sugars. And of course it will, but the reality is it's actually causing more harm. It's causing more hormone instability. So they're already doing like 16, 18 hours many times, and we're backing them off because their body is not ready for that type of
Oh,
situation.
okay.
Once we get them to a place that they're healthy and they want to do a 24-hour fast or a three day fast, once a month, whatever. Yeah, you can do that. But right now, there's so much instability, it actually causes more harm on that than we typically see. And yeah, there's a lot of other things that can be done as well. But these individuals are very, very sick, and we need to get them back into a place like 2 or 3 ticks above where they can handle a
Mm.
lot of these things that are necessary, including like a liver flush. I kind of I usually kind of give this analogy. So there's a liver flush or a liver cleanse, right? And oftentimes I see the liver cleanse as a situation where you're making the engine look cleaner. But a liver flush is where you're improving the function
Mm.
of, of the organ itself. And those are two different mechanisms. And oftentimes people don't know the difference because they don't know what they're actually doing. So it's what we're trying to do is we're trying to help the ability for detoxification take place. There are 3 levels of detoxification in the liver, kind of like dipping the old photography stuff, right? Boom, the 3 different liquids, if you will. And so it's and the typically the first 2 are usually never the issue. It's the third one that's usually the one that's usually clogged up, and that's with the bile and making sure it moves out of the liver into the gastrointestinal system for release there. And that's the one that usually needs the most support. This is why we see people developing gallstones, why we see so many people having gallbladder removals, because that third level of detoxification is so clogged up that it's getting sicker and sicker, and we're building up with all this toxic burden there because they can't get rid of these things. And the next thing you know, the person's removing a gallbladder or they're having gallstones. No one can tell them why it's happening. It's because they're so congested from multiple years of damage, and who knows how high these levels are in their body.
What do you think about some of these places that do like 100 plus labs? Like there's Function Health and Superpower. There's a few of these that have sort of popped up in the last few years, and they'll give you, for it's like $200 or something like that. It's 100 and some labs. Are those helpful, or do they miss
I think
things
I think
too?
they're very helpful. I mean,
Hmm.
as long as you have somebody or if you have the knowledge to evaluate it, to know what's
Yeah.
going on. Like I don't even evaluate my own labs, right? I don't want to. I don't want to be my own doctor. I
Oh,
send it over to a colleague. I have him evaluate it. He gives me recommendations and I tweak the things that I'm doing. I do this, like I said, roughly every 6 months. And so I think it's important. I think it's phenomenal of access. These access of getting these tests ran is so important because unfortunately, in the medical model, you're going to get a wall. You're not going to be able to get it done. It's not going to happen because
yeah.
that's not the intention. The intention is to not keep you healthy. The intention is to make sure you don't die today, right? That's the medical model because medicine was created for emergency medicine. The only reason why medical practitioners are even dealing with chronic degenerative diseases is because we have pharmaceuticals. And pharmaceuticals have only been around 100 years, roughly, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but natural medicine has been around thousands, tens of thousands of years, but people have more faith in pharmaceutical medication they do in natural medicine. I can't. It's so interesting to me how often where somebody like one of our patients has some sort of emergency situation happens, they go to the hospital, and of course they blame it on the supplements. Every single time it's on the supplements. Oh, it's
Mm.
got to be the supplements. You got to stop all supplements because it's got to be the supplements that's going on. I'm like, we're talking about natural herbs. Natural herbs are causing these problems? No, it's because the body has finally met a threshold that we're now seeing the symptoms. And unfortunately, because they don't have an insight of what's going on with that individual, meaning it's usually the chronicity of their disease is getting worse, they're going to blame it on something outside of their pharmaceutical model because they can control pharmaceuticals. But because there's a little knowledge, minimal knowledge in the supplement and nutraceutical and herb world, they're going to blame it on that. You got to stop all that. I mean, I'm meeting with someone today saying their doctor saying, oh, they believe that one of the herbs you're giving me is interacting with the medication. And I looked it up. I looked up the medication. There is zero contraindications to any herbs, vitamins, or nutraceuticals to this medication. But because it's easier to say, oh, it can't be something we're doing, that's gonna be something you're doing. Now we got to stop this. Like that is wild to me, and it's so often. And I've had an open dialogue and open phone calls to any and all of our patients, practitioners, to call me to discuss what we're doing and have a conversation. I would love to educate them and be a team member in what they're doing, so we have this team relationship to help this patient get better. And over 20 years, I've received zero phone calls. Not one.
That was going to be my next question.
Not one. I've had zero phone calls.
Whoa.
And actually, I had one. I actually reached out, interestingly enough, we had a patient. She had 8 autoimmune diseases, 8 of them.
Whoa.
And so, and I called this, and it was interesting. This was a naturopathic doctor locally here. And I said, hey, we ran an advanced test on her, and her estrogen levels are off the charts. Like they're super high. And as you're probably aware, we know estrogen burden, dominance like this can actually stimulate immune reactions that can drive the autoimmunes. And I know that you're giving her HRT therapy, which I'm not opposed to HRT therapy, but I was just wondering if we can have a dialogue to talk about what we can do to start adjusting this. And you know what she told me? Well, we only use blood tests as an evaluation. Her blood tests are showing fine, so we're not going to change anything. The blinders that we're on, and I'm like, you're a naturopathic doctor. Like you have to have open blinders here, but because oftentimes, and it's the same thing that happened with DOs, right? Doctors of osteopathy. And originally, it was created for more natural support, more natural with medication if needed. But what has happened now? Nearly all DOs have gone over to the pharmaceutical model. And I believe it's starting to happen more and more in the natural medicine, naturopathic doctors is starting to occur as well. And it's really crazy why this is happening. I don't understand it, but it's because because they're getting more of those open ability to prescribe, right? Some states allow naturopathic doctors to prescribe pharmaceuticals. That could be hormones or lower class levels of medications. Other states that don't allow it as well. And for many years, there are multiple states that are trying to lobby to allow doctors of chiropractic to get in that as well. And I am telling you, if it does happen, I'm going to probably give up my license. I don't want to get in that type of liability. I don't want to be involved in that. I want to be involved in the health and wellness aspect of it. I don't want to be involved in the prescribing aspect. I can have someone else. I can refer to a doctor to do all that stuff. That's what they wanted to do. That's what their career is. They can do that. I don't want to be involved in that.
I had no idea that was going on. That's the first I've heard of this. That's unbelievable.
The New Mexico Board of Chiropractic has been trying for decades to try to get into pharmaceuticals. The only other state, Washington State does have a little bit more open laws. Like you can, as a chiropractor there, you can do minor surgeries and you can deliver babies. That's part of your license in the state of Washington. I'm sorry, Oregon, not Washington, Oregon. Mm-hmm. And so, and that, I think they're trying to expand that into these other levels, which is, I'll be completely out if that happens.
It sounds like it's money driven.
That's right.
I had a guy on here a few years ago that was talking about, he goes, the model is don't kill them and don't cure them. Keep them coming back for more, which is, not really part of any kind of ethical way of looking at things, in my opinion. I mean, it's
good marketing, though.
Yeah, it's total marketing. But, and I was just, my daughter just graduated from medical school last week.
Congrats.
And they read the Hippocratic Oath.
Yep.
As I'm listening to it, I'm going, what doctor can actually follow this now? I mean, obviously there's some gray areas and there's interpretation and there's things like that, but just the idea of do no harm, an argument can be made that there's a lot of harm being done. And you wonder that, the fact that no one called you back over 20 years, do they know they're doing harm and they just don't want to have to look at it? In a sense, if you're giving information that's helpful to a patient and it's not in line with what a physician is doing, and they don't, and they're not willing to look at it, that means I think in some level they know intuitively that maybe what they're doing is not the right thing, and the fact that that somebody wouldn't want to at least hear the information, that's an indication to me that these people know that there's other possibilities, or I guess maybe they're so closed off, they don't want to know if there is, which is also irresponsible.
It's and in my opinion, it's negligence, right? I mean, that's a pretty, I know, strong word to say, but it
It is. Well, it
is.
is. Yeah.
And when you think about as well, like you think about I mean, your daughter just went through this. I mean, you're spending so much money to get this education, right? And then you start to question that. Well, now you're going against the traditional medical algorithm, right? There are algorithms, and if you follow the algorithm, you're protected by the AMA and you're protected by your malpractice. But if you go
Well,
outside that algorithm, now you're not protected and now you're licensed in place. So even though you may be intuitively thinking, hey, this is not right, I should be doing something different. If you do different, you're actually going to have more harm than if you do what you're being told to do. And that is wild. That is really
yeah.
wild. And they're
Yeah.
stuck and handcuffed in the situation. I talked to a lot of medical doctors, and they're like, "Listen, we have to follow this algorithm. Like, if their cholesterol comes in and it's 200 over 200, we got to give them a cholesterol medication. If their blood pressure is so we have to give them blood pressure. If their blood sugar is here, we got to do this." And I'm like, well, what about looking at other avenues and identifying what the problem is and the cause? Like, well, that's not part of the algorithm. We're not required to do that. But they're telling their patients that there's no other option. This is it. And it's interesting you said that because I was on a podcast about a month ago, and it was another functional medicine practitioner, and she was like, listen, I had a colleague of mine tell me that functional medicine practitioners are in the business of getting rid of their patients, and medicine's getting in the business of keeping their patients. And I was like, wow, it's pretty unique that you said that but it's actually true. Our goal is to get them to a place that they get healthy and they can just maintain it on their own. And now you can continue to do this on your own. Whereas medicine is once you become a customer, you're a customer for the rest of your life. When are you able to get off this medication? Never. You're on it for the rest of your life. And
Yeah.
we got to
Well,
manage it for you. So you got to come here every 6 months.
that's also part of the psychiatry therapy,
Yep.
psychotherapy world too. It's keep, and it's like, I don't want to come here anymore. So I have somebody in my life who has had issues with pre-diabetic, sugar, insulin resistance. Also, was recommended that she take leptin, that she had leptin resistance, which I'm not sure exactly how leptin and insulin. I tried to read about it, but my brain won't comprehend it.
Yeah.
So let's say somebody is sort of on this borderline of feeling kind of strange, when there's sugar issues, and then I'm wondering what is the relationship between that and weight gain and weight loss and hormones.
Essentially, you open up Pandora's box there. So I'm going to try to go
Oh,
as
good.
slow and as much as possible, and try to keep it as simple as possible to understand.
Okay, thank you.
So
Great.
leptin is a chemical reaction to tell your brain that you're satiated, right? You're full,
Mm-hmm.
right? The same thing happens with GLP-1. This is why GLP-1s are so huge these days. So we have natural GLP-1 peptides in our GI that also communicates to the brain that we're full. Now, what happens is when you start to get these higher levels of insulin release inside the body over time, it starts to suppress leptin and GLP-1. So when you start suppressing this leptin and GLP-1, you lose the ability of satiation. So you want to eat more. You're consuming more throughout the day. And usually if you have that sugar situation, it's usually going to be bad quality food, sugar stuff. And because you have the higher amounts of insulin, you're producing, that's creating more of a stressful environment because you're consuming more food and you have more sugar being released from your GI, you're now going to produce more cortisol. So now what is cortisol going to do? Cause you to gain weight, hold on to weight. And insulin is also a fat storing hormone, so it makes you gain weight as well. So you start building on weight, which now you start disrupting your hormones, especially as a male. You start producing more estrogens. You start converting more of your testosterone to estrogens. And females can do the opposites. They can start converting more estrogen as well, or they can start converting more testosterone. And we start getting these imbalance in our hormones, which is called metabolic syndrome. This is what metabolic syndrome actually happens, is what is occurring. Now, you may still have regulated A1C or blood sugars at this point. You may have a pre-diabetic situation, but this process has now started, right? So pre-diabetes is, I kind of give the example of it being like pre-pregnancy. There is no pre-pregnancy, right? It's happening, right? The snowball's happening. You just don't have enough cellular damage that you don't see the higher levels of sugars on a regular basis. But over time, as it persists, you're going to start seeing that more and more and more and more. This is why GLP-1s are working so well right now, because what it does is it boosts GLP-1 inside your gut that's being suppressed by your insulin. now communicating to your brain, hey, I'm full, so you're not consuming as much food, and you're slowing the motility of the food and the sugar being released, so this person's able to lose weight and lower sugars. That's the mechanism of action that's going on in the body. But is it fixing the underlying issue? No, because when they get off these GLP-1s, what happens? The problem is still there. The issue hasn't been corrected. So they start gaining the weight right back again. They start eating more food. Their insulin goes back up again, and they start seeing these blood sugars coming back. So you see these individuals that are staying on these GLP-1s for years, which is very damaging because now you're having things like GI paralysis or gastroparesis, which is now we're seeing a one I think it's like a $1 billion lawsuit right now against Ozempic because of this happening to individuals. These are massive things that are going on that can be harmful if you're doing these things too long because they know if they stop it, it's going to all come right back again. It's this the whole weight loss thing, right? Lose weight loss fast, but no able to maintain it, and again you gain it all back again. Or the people who went through the stomach stapling or the gastric bypass, right? The gastric bypass, they become non-diabetic, but it comes right back again because they never fix the underlying issue and they start gaining that weight back again as well. This is no different. It's somewhat of a fad that's going to happen here for a while, and then it's going to start to go away over time. We're going to have some sickness.
I think we're going to see some big problems.
Yeah, I do too.
There's a look that some of these people that are on this have. You see it mostly in the face, but it's like saggy and strange, and they don't look healthy. They don't look vibrant.
No, and it's because they're losing more muscle mass than actually fat. So they're skinny, fat people. If you look at the analytics on like an InBody or something else where they can do analytics for this, you'll see their muscle mass is decreasing and their percent body fat is not going down. It's pretty devastating.
I mean, my friend called me the other day and he hadn't seen his sister for a while. And he goes, this is what he said. He goes, my sister, who used to be so voluptuous, she's got Ozempic face. That's what he called it.
That's right. Ozempic butt and Ozempic face.
Yeah, he goes,
right?
It was really disturbing to see.
I think there can be benefits on it, but I think it has to be done a certain way. Either it has to be a micro dosing situation or cycling it, right? Maybe 60 to 90 days and you get off, allow your body to stabilize, and then you can start making sure you're exercising. We have to see these individuals doing strength training, very important. Activity levels are going to be important. Protein levels, they have to be consuming a high amount of protein as well to sustain the muscle mass and help their body heal. But again, usually a lot of this information is not being given. They're just saying, here, take the GLP-1, lose the weight.
Which is interesting that they know chemically how it's working and what it's doing. And probably, which means there's an understanding of how the body is supposed to work in an ideal situation. It's just, we don't want to deal with how to do that without this pharmaceutical.
Yeah.
Which is it's like the knowledge is there certainly chemically, biologically, like people get what that is. That's how these things get developed.
Mm-hmm. And that's why if it's used appropriately in a way that you're using it to help boost natural GLP-1, stabilize the insulin response, help the cells heal, get the body in better healthy states, then you can do that for a period of time. Now the body's more stabilized, you can do it on its own. And that's how it should be used. But unfortunately, it's just saying, oh, you want a GLP-1? Here you go. Here's your 90-day supply. Go take it with no instructions. Here's your dosage. And they just take it and they don't do anything else. And we're seeing all these people getting sicker and sicker.
Yeah, I think, at best it's lazy and like you said, it's negligent.
Yep.
Especially because it doesn't have to be that way.
100%.
And 100%. And maybe people just aren't willing to do the work, because it is a lifestyle change, which is a big thing for people to go, well, I've been doing this my whole life. Why should I change? I like cheeseburgers. I'm just picking a food that's sort of obviously disgusting.
Sure. Yeah.
Delicious. Yes. Disgusting too.
Yeah. Harmful to the body. And I always say, at least when we work with a lot of type 2 diabetics, so the first step in reversing type 2 diabetes is 6 inches between your ears, right? That motivation, that drive of willing to change. And that lesson I learned from my mom, because she was not willing to change. She was not willing to do the things that I was asking her to do. And so if I can't convince my mom, who's probably one of the closest individuals in my life, then I can't convince anybody else. So it has to come from within the person first, that they're willing to make the changes, and then we can guide them and show them what needs to be done.
We're talking about some of the physicians that kind of understand that there's some other ways, and they can't.
That's right.
There's just not a lot. I mean, my own primary care doctor, he's a great guy. I go to him once a year for a physical, and and then I ask for other tests sometimes. He goes, I can't. They won't let me. He goes,
That's
I can
right.
put in for it, but they're probably not going to. He goes, I don't know if you realize this, but the health system is not run by doctors. It's run by MBAs now.
That's right.
That's how he put it. And he goes, that stuff and all this sort of paperwork kind of stuff he goes, that's going to get me, like you were saying, it's going to get me out of being a doctor, because it's not
Yep.
the patients, it's not the helping people. He goes, I love all that. He goes, but this bureaucracy and business model is so debilitating sometimes that he goes, I just want to scream. It's just, and there is I read some statistic how many doctors are leaving the United States to go to Canada because they have a little bit more freedom to do what they want, and it's a little bit more open to things, even though the money probably isn't even as much. It's like a huge jump in doctors leaving the U.S. to work in Canada.
Yeah, I think, and also concierge medicine as well is a big one that's happening also. So
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
removing
yeah.
themselves from that model, which is essentially the insurance model, and
Right.
allows them to be more open because now they're a cash paying patient, which gives you more freedom to do additional things. You can go outside the box a little more, if you will, because you're not having to follow the guidelines and get approval for this, and that type of thing. It's just crazy, and I don't blame them. The amount of hours they got to work, and some of them are just leaving private practice and just getting a hospital job because they can just show up, do their job, and help patients, and then someone else worries about all the bureaucracy of it and everything. So it makes a lot of sense, and I feel for them because you're right. There's a lot of great people that got into it for the right reasons. They really
Yeah.
wanted to help people, but come to find out, they're like, man, it's not about helping people. It's about following a certain regimen, and if I don't do it, I'm in trouble.
It's heartbreaking, really, when you think about it. It's the frustration to me is it doesn't have to be that way, and the the drive, the money drive is just it's too much.
I think it may change in the future, maybe not in our lifetime or our kids' lifetime, but I think people are wanting more. They're sick and tired of taking all the pharmaceuticals. They're looking for other options. They're seeking other options, which is why I think we've got a phenomenal model, and eventually medicine's going to have to either jump on board or try to do something to eliminate it altogether. And I think that's something they tried to do in the past. They tried to get the FDA involved in regulating supplements, and it didn't go through
Right.
because it's natural. It's natural protocols, right? I mean, what was it? Maybe like 15 years ago, the FDA was saying we need all manufacturers of supplements to remove red rice yeast extract, right? Because it
Yeah.
was having such a dramatic effect on lowering cholesterol, to the fact it was lowering cholesterol, lowering more than traditional statins. And then the pharmaceuticals were losing the market. So they basically said, you either got to remove it altogether or decrease the dosage you can put in a bottle so you can still sell it. And that's what they did. They started decreasing the dosages. That's insane. That's crazy.
Shakedown.
It's crazy. It's
Yeah.
it's nuts. So this is a kind of thing that we're seeing across the board, and the more that we can fight back, and the reality is not us as the clinicians that need to fight back, it's the patients. Because once the patients start fighting back, they go to the politicians, they say we want this, and they have to start changing their voting if they want to continue being in that level.
Yeah, well, the insurance model obviously is not really working very well, and it's getting
No.
worse for people.
Yep.
Now they're not even able to get insurance. That is going to, eventually it's going to, that system is going to eat its young, and people aren't even, they're just going to go, well, I'm not going to even have insurance because I can't afford it. And they'll have to figure out other things, and they just won't have the business that they've had. It's going to have to be an economic change, like you say, coming from the populace.
Yep.
And you hope that it's happens sooner than later, and that not too many people get hurt.
If we change the model, and it's going to be very challenging to change it, but if we change the model to more of a car insurance model, then we're going to have a completely different system on our hands, right? So if you think about your car insurance, it doesn't pay for your new tires, doesn't pay for your new brakes, or if your engine breaks down, or even your transmission breaks down, or your oil changes. It only pays for when there's a emergency situation, a car accident, things, those sort of things. So if we had the same type of model for our health insurance, I mean, think about how more proactive people become. I mean, look at how they baby their cars, right?
Hmm.
They spend more money on their cars than they do on their own health. It's
Absolutely.
pretty wild.
Hmm.
And so if we change that model and say, listen, if you have X, Y, and Z going on, you got to pay out of pocket for that. Right. But if you have an emergency, a heart attack, a stroke, or some other emergency, cancer, or whatever, yeah, we'll pay for that for you. But if you have issues that are going on with your body, you got to go pay for your own MRI. You got to go pay for your own blood tests. You got to go pay for all these things on your own. Now people start changing the way their mentality, the way they take care of their health.
Then what also happens is the entities that are doing those other things like MRIs, businesses are created at a much more doable price point
That's right.
because more people are going to go. It's like, oh, an MRI is going to cost me, I don't know what they are, thousands. I have no idea. And
It's about $900 for an MRI, cash rate.
yeah, and there's no reason for it to be that high.
No, it should be somewhere around like 250 to 500.
It's like doable for people.
Yep.
I'm hoping that's what happens. What would you say to somebody that says, I want to be just as healthy as I possibly can. I don't want to have to ever be on medications. If I don't have to be, I want to have energy. I don't want brain fog. I just want to feel great. I mean, you know all this information. What would you say to these people? How should people go about that to be proactive in their own health?
Yeah, the first thing I would do is at an absolute minimum is run a comprehensive blood test, like just a test to identify, is there anything going on in your body? Again, not a disease, but things are breaking down, right? This is the exact same thing with a car analogy, right? If your check engine light of your car goes on, you have one of two options. You can cover it with a piece of black tape or take out the fuse, or you can take it to your mechanic to get an evaluation. And so the evaluation you get from your mechanic is a diagnostic evaluation. This is no different. We're evaluating you to see, is there anything going on? And if there is some areas that are showing problems, then we can give you recommendations through a lifestyle nutritional support,
Mm-hmm.
as well as we can give you specific supplements or nutraceuticals to help those areas improve function. And then, like I said, I do it every 6 months. Some people may get that evaluated once a year and make some changes in their protocols. So there's always things that are happening. We're involved in a world that is full of toxins. We can try to eat healthy, but you're going to restaurants that have seed oils, and you're just going to consume things or be around things that are going to cause harm in your body. So the sooner you have to take a proactive approach, and the more active you are on that, the less likely those things are going to occur inside your body. So blood tests at an absolute minimum. If you want to do more advanced tests by looking at hormones, you can do like I said, GI mapping, where you can look to see if there's any kind of GI issues or infection patterns, or you could do any things like the toxicity stuff to see if there's any toxic burden building up. You can do a lot of things to optimize your body. It depends on your goals and what your intention is. And is it like, hey, I want to run everything to see what's going on, let's create a whole plan? Or, hey, I just want you to run a test on me, see where I'm at, and then give me some things I can do to optimize. That's kind of like the conversation I would have initially with the person, which helps us understand where we're going. Like, is it going to be more of I'll use an easy blood test, or are we going to do some more advanced testing to identify what's happening?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that the sort of conventional yearly physical does not include comprehensive testing.
That's right.
Or it's minimal.
Yep.
It's very minimal. I mean, I was, I've seen, I've read a couple of books about what just even the minimal should be. And we're not even there yet.
No.
It's like, why isn't your doctor doing this? Because they don't, it's just, that's all it is.
Yeah. But like you said, it's the system that's not allowing them to do it, right? They have the knowledge and they would be open to doing it if it was going to be covered by your insurance, or if it was going to be able to help them to create a plan for you. Because even if they were to do some of these more advanced testing, oftentimes if that problem comes back as an issue, well, now you as the doctor are liable. What if there's no treatment in the medical model for that?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That becomes an issue now. So that's another reason why they don't run a lot of these tests, because if it comes back as a problem and they don't have a treatment for you, it's just like, we can catch early signs of dementia and Alzheimer's development. There's an MRI with what's called, it's a volume metric study where you can measure the volume of your brain through an MRI and using a software that will evaluate your different levels of your brain and compare it to other individuals of your age group. So males in their 60s, you get compared to males in your 60s. Females in their 70s, you get compared to females in their 70s. And you can see where certain areas are potentially downsizing. And is it enough that is clinically enough to say, hey, there's a problem developing here. Let's address this. Which means you can actually capture very early signs of dementia or Alzheimer's developing in the body or in the brain, I should say, or the person starts experiencing symptoms. But now there's two issues. The first one is the individual who is dealing with this, if they don't notice the symptoms, are they willing to do treatment to prevent it from happening? That's question number one, which is usually not the case for most individuals, because most people won't do anything until they start feeling the symptoms or are diagnosed. And the second one is because there is no pharmaceuticals in the medical model to give someone to help that heal. That's why it's not done in a traditional model. Most people who are being diagnosed with early stage Alzheimer's, well, they're usually in like stage 2 or 3. There's 7 stages, right? And so stage 2 is what's considered mild cognitive impairments. This is where people around you are already noticing noticing he's not, all there. Like he's forgetting things more often. He's like there's things falling off.
Yeah, sure.
Phase 3 is where they can't even balance their checkbook anymore.
Yeah.
Like that's the jump, and that's usually when they're diagnosed. Well, it's too late at that point in many cases. So it's there's a lot of things that can be evaluated, but number one is the person willing to do something about it, because oftentimes people are not motivated unless there's pain behind it. And number two, at least in the medical model, is there a treatment they can be given? And that's oftentimes not the case.
I had no idea that even existed. That's amazing.
And even cardiovascular stuff, right? Heart disease. The traditional mechanism for heart disease is we evaluate for cholesterol. If you have elevated cholesterol, you have a risk for heart disease, and you need to be on a statin. Or they do a stress test, right? They put you on a treadmill, they evaluate things, and you can pass that. Well, those have all been shown to be very, very low total on the totem pole for evaluating for cardiovascular. There are much higher level tests. Things like C-reactive protein is a very high level analytics for inflammation on the heart and risk for cardiovascular disease. Things like homocysteine is another one that's involved with cardiovascular disease. ApoB is a very important marker for cardiovascular LP little a. And there's other advanced testing like calcium score can be a good one. CT scans with something called Clearly, which evaluates the arteries around the heart for cloggage. All these things are there, but they're rarely ever done because number one, it costs the insurance model more money. And number two, it doesn't change the treatment. If your ApoB comes back high, if your LPA comes back high, if you have elevated C-reactive protein and you have elevated cholesterol, the only treatment is cholesterol medication. So why run all these other tests?
There's so many people I know that are on statins, and how aggressively they're pushed by the doctors. And I don't know if they've lowered the numbers to sell more over the years. And like you say, it's not even necessarily the right thing to do.
And it's interesting when you look at cholesterol and the mechanics behind cholesterol. Roughly about, I don't know, I've heard different things, but roughly about 15 to 25% of elevated cholesterol comes from food, from nutrition. That's a very small percentage, right? So your diet is only about 15 to 20% of that cholesterol production. The rest of it, cholesterol is actually important for multiple things. We need it for our brain because our brain is 70% fat, which is cholesterol. We need it for sex hormones. We need it for our cells. Our cells have this cholesterol as well. But on top of that, cholesterol is a protective mechanism by the body to patch and heal damage. So when you get little arterial wall damage, the body will say, the brain says, we need to patch that up, so it produces cholesterol. So where does these little arterial damage come from? Chronic inflammation is one of them, right? We have systemic inflammation happening. It's damaging your artery walls. And the more patching you put, eventually it clogs. Yeah. So it's actually a defense mechanism that's going on. Your body's trying to protect you that creates damage because nobody has addressed the inflammatory reaction. Blood sugars is another one, right? When you look at sugar itself and you look at it under a microscope, it's not like a smooth layer. It's jagged, right? It's very jagged and very, when sugar is circulating your bloodstream at high levels, it starts nicking the arterial walls. causing damage. So that's why blood sugar is so damaging because number one, it's the density of it and so much of it, but it's actually causing systemic damage inside your system, which requires more cholesterol production. That's why we see a lot of diabetics with higher cholesterol. And what is it? What do we want to do? We want to suppress that. So we suppress cholesterol production, which means we have less protection for patching up these holes. And next thing you know, this person has a stroke or artery or an embolism.
Scary being human.
It's scary, but if we understand the mechanics
Right.
behind it,
Yeah.
and we understand, and we keep asking the questions of why is this actually happening, rather than saying, "Oh, this is high, let's bring it low" with a pharmaceutical synthetic, and saying, "Well, why is your blood pressure high?" Well, you've got the reason why it's high is because you have elevated cholesterol. Okay, why is my elevated cholesterol high? Because you have systemic inflammation. Well, what are inflammation? Well, you have chronic infection patterns. You have foods that you're causing systemic. So we start looking at the model here and we start removing those problems. Inflammation goes down, cholesterol goes down, the body stabilizes. So it's very simplistic and easy, but we want to complicate it because it's easier to pop a pill every single day and not change my lifestyle.
That is the trick, is to be able to look at it that honestly and go, I need to change some things in the way I'm living.
100%. And and that is where most people are going to fall short because they want the easy way out.
Yeah.
And it's easy to go see my doctor. I go pick it up at the pharmacy. I take this every single day, and that's all I got to do. I don't have to change anything else. And that is a problem because now we're setting that person up for failure for the future and more damage and more health related issues.
Well, I always like that saying, and it applies to a lot of things, which is that a shortcut is the fastest way to the back of the line.
Isn't that the truth? No, no joke. And I always tell people, I'm like, listen, most people do a pretty good job of, putting money aside for retirement, right? They want to get to a place where they no longer have to work and they want to they don't have to live a lavish life, just enough to keep them going and have enough money to live the rest of their life. But how many of us are actually investing into our health? Because we know that if we invest financially, that'll pay dividends in our future. But if we invest in our health today, that'll also pay dividends. How many people are retired that are sick, decrepit, and can't do anything? Like it happens all the time. They're not enjoying their life because they didn't do anything to invest today.
And certainly it isn't talked about in school for sure. I remember just seeing that sort of food pyramid.
Yeah.
It was about the extent of it. And I think it was, I don't even know what year it was. I was in elementary school one time, never talked about it again.
Right.
And it's really sort of the underpinning of everything. It's like if you're born and you're given this body, and hopefully it's in good shape. Most people are born healthy. And so that's one of the questions is how do I stay that way?
It was very interesting to me. And I'm going to go back to a few years back when we were in COVID, right? Where they were shutting down all these really healthy restaurants, right? Serving healthy food, but kept all the fast food open.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
They left all of them open, but restaurants had to shut down, including the ones that were serving really good, healthy food. And so it was completely backwards. This was not and I think that it's so important that we don't have a healthcare system. We have a sick or reactive care system.
Yeah.
Because if we truly had a healthcare system, if you went into the hospital today because of a cardiovascular event and they saved your life, which they're really good at, and you left that hospital, you should have a document in hand saying you need to find someone. Here's a list of doctors to go see to identify why you had this happening so you can get healthy again. That would be a true healthcare system. But what are they told? Go talk to your cardiologist, go talk to your doctor to manage your pharmaceuticals. And no one is ever going back to find out why this happened in the first place. And that is where our healthcare system is falling short.
I had a friend that had a heart attack or almost a heart attack. They figured it out during a stress test or something that he had the widowmaker
LAD
artery. Yeah. So he went emergency surgery. The doctor says, you're not leaving the office, or you're not going home. You're going right. So they did the surgery, and I saw him, months later, and he was on some medication. I don't remember what. And we went to a restaurant, and he ordered corned beef hash.
Yep.
And I go, why are you eating that shit, man? That's like you just
Yeah.
had it. And he goes, no, it's fine. I talked to the doctor and I'm on the medication. It's not a problem.
Yep.
I go, yeah, I don't think you want to do this, but he just went
It's
right
a
back to his
crutch. It's a
lifestyle.
crutch. It's a crutch that now they can do. Do you know how often I hear patients telling me their doctor saying, "Don't worry about what you're eating, just take more insulin."
Mm, yeah.
That statement alone is such, you might as well go and get your casket ready and get your plot ready to go, because that is basically a death sentence by telling somebody that.
Yeah. Wow.
It
And they're
happens
not,
all the time.
yeah. And they
And they're
think they're,
taking 150, 200, 250 units of insulin a day. And they have no idea how damaging and problematic it is for their body, because no one's telling them anything different.
it's an unfortunate thing that we don't start very young with the most important things. And I'm thinking that there are probably other cultures that actually do that. I'm not super well versed in how other cultures approach things, but you do see a little bit less of the poison going into people in certain other countries, and the lifestyles seem to be more geared to feeling good. The obesity
Yeah.
thing here is just that's sort of the obvious outward indication of ill health. You see a huge percentage of people that are just really not in good shape.
And you're right. It's all about education. Like my kids, I have 10-year-old twins, boy, girl, and they don't eat gluten. They don't eat dairy. They've never been to a fast food place. It was interesting. We were at some event and they were having this conversation about who has the best French fries, who's got the best, French fries, and everyone was like McDonald's, and my kids were like, "What's McDonald's?" They've never been to McDonald's. They have
Yeah.
no idea what it is. They don't know what the food is. They didn't even know who Ronald McDonald was at the Macy's Day Parade. They didn't even know who that was. They're like, "Who is this clown? Who is this?" They have no idea. It's because we've educated them. And like we have like, kids come to our house and we give them our snacks and they won't even eat it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And also the other thing, because I tried a bunch of that when my kids were little, and part of it was they felt left out. And so there was times we had to say, oh, okay,
Yeah,
try
it's
it.
interesting. They've never asked for it. They've
Yeah.
never gone to, and again, when they get
You're
to a
lucky.
certain age, if they want that, when they get to a certain age, that's their decision. But we hope that we've educated them enough that they won't want that. Or likely what will happen is if they ever consume it at one time, they're probably going to get sick
They won't feel good.
and
Yeah.
they won't want to go back to it, is more likely to be the case, because that has happened before. I remember my son. My son, he was like 2 or 3 years old, and we were at one of those like little jumpy places, like the
Yeah.
trampoline
Yeah.
place,
Yeah. Yeah.
what I'm talking about? And they have all these little parties, and my wife's like looking for him, like, where the heck is he? Well, he followed this group of kids into a party that he wasn't even invited to, and he was about to like eat this piece of pizza. My wife's like, no.
Yeah.
He had this big smile on his face, like, and the parents didn't know because they thought he was part of the kids and the part of the party and everything. But like, it's just like funny stuff like that that's been happening. But yeah, they have very little interest in those things. Like we drive by them, and even if their friends are eating those things, they've never asked for it.
That's amazing.
Very, very interesting. Very
Just out of the
interesting.
curiosity, you'd think sometimes you hear about people raised that way and they say, oh, when I left home, I went crazy doing
Yeah.
everything I wasn't allowed to do. And then I stopped because I didn't like it.
Yep. And
So,
that was me. Like I tell people, like when I think the last time I've ever had, I'm going to use like a traditional fast food place, like McDonald's, Burger King, those types of places, right? The last time was probably 1999
mhm,
that I consumed anything from those places.
yeah.
And even when we're on road trips, like we find something that's a better option than that. Like there's a lot of things out there that are when you go on road trips, you just look for like little small little cafes or a little restaurant that are way better anyhow because they have better quality food typically.
Usually, yes. And then you can, sort of modify on the menu a little bit if you
Oh,
have to.
I don't think I've eaten off a traditional menu in many, many years. I always modify almost everything on the menu.
Well, what a great talk. I could do this all day.
Same. This is fun. I forgot we were doing a podcast. I thought we were just chatting here the whole
Well,
time.
oh, good. That's I feel good about that because that's what I try to get to happen. Just a couple of people talking. So it's Wonderful to talk to you and get all this great information, because I've actually gotten some new stuff today, which is always a treat for me.
Awesome. I love that. I love that.
Any type of website or something people can go to find out more that you'd like to talk about for a second?
Yeah, probably the easiest of those who are interested in learning more about what we do is my website is Dr. Shumard, so Dr. Shumard, SHUMARD.com. On there, we've got a lot of great information, but more importantly, there's an option on there that you can actually register for my webinar. I hold a webinar. We talk more about type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, and the things behind it, if you will, and how to evaluate it for it. So more importantly, how to address it and actually get your diabetes back into remission. So it's about an hour-long webinar. Typically, it's packed full of great information. You can register on that right there and watch it.
Well, there you go, folks. If you know somebody that has that situation going on, that's where you want to go, to that webinar. Well, thank you for talking to me today. I really appreciate it. And best of luck to you and your family, of course. And thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
Much appreciation for you folks listening to The Exploding Human. The website is theexplodinghuman.com. You can also listen on YouTube. That is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. Once again, I want to thank Jason Shumard for being on the show. And you can find out more at drshumard.com. Have a great day. Thank you.